Hello, welcome to today's webinar, Reintroducing T-Splines for Rhino. I'm Matt Sederberg. I was the co-founder and CEO of T-Splines Inc. before we sold that to Autodesk about a year ago, and now I'm the T-Splines product manager at Autodesk. And I'm joined today by a very special guest, Carl Bass, the CEO of Autodesk. So welcome, Carl.
Thanks, Matt. Happy to be here.
Yeah, really appreciate you taking the time for this. So,
no problem.
Yeah, so there's three things that we wanted to talk about today. First was just getting reacquainted with our community. We used to have regular webinars, and it's been a while since we've had one. Second, I wanted to introduce everyone to Carl Bass, the CEO of Autodesk, to hear from him more about his thoughts about T-splines and CAD software in general. I think you'll be surprised at his perspective, both as the head of a $2 billion company, that's Autodesk, as well as a CAD software user. Third, we'll give some more details about what the future of T-splines looks like, both as a Rhino plugin and another software. And then finally, as is our custom with our T-splines webinars, when we invite special guests, Carl Bass will give a live demo of T-splines for Rhino. I'm sorry, just kidding, Carl. We're doing a live Q&A at the end of the webinar. Carl actually is a T-splines user, but we thought the time would be better spent giving you a chance to talk with Carl and get live, unfiltered responses from him. So just a bit of housekeeping before we get started. This webinar is being recorded. We'll post it and give you a link afterwards. You are all muted, but please type in questions in the Q&A panel throughout the webinar. We have staff on hand that can type questions back throughout the webinar, and then we'll have that dedicated Q&A time at the end. And then finally, we'll have a pop-up survey that will appear after you exit the webinar. If you could fill that out, that would really help us out to gauge your response. So to start off, just a reminder of what T-Splines for Rhino is. It's a plugin that's tightly integrated inside Rhino that's used predominantly by industrial designers, jewelers, and architects to create organic freeform shapes. The reason why they use T-splines is that instead of just the NURBS available in Rhino is that T-splines lets you create and edit these types of free-flowing shapes more quickly without needing to pay attention to the math about how everything fits together. So as we're taking some time to get reacquainted, I thought it would be interesting not only for us to tell you what we've been up to, but also to check in with our users to see what you've been up to over the past year. So I posed an invitation on our T-splines forum to ask users to post work that they've done recently, and ended up getting more responses than I could share. So if you go to our T-splines forum, you'll see a lot more responses, and they're all excellent. So here's just a few. So this is one example, Carl, I really like. This is done by Travis Serio, and I think this is really just a representative T-splines model that really shows the strengths of having a free-form branching shape.
It looks great.
Yeah, and the other thing that this brings out is that this is the T-splines model, but then you can see also this model was pushed downstream to be detailed in a sculpting program, probably like ZBrush or Mudbox. That's something that our users really like, is that compatibility between T-splines and other software programs. A lot of our users ended up adding some comments to voice their delight in the continued development of T-splines for Rhino. So this is a model where you can see the body and seats done in T-splines, and the detailing, the part breakout, was done in Rhino, which is really a great way to use the tools together. I love the personality of this little bulldog that visitors been able to just imbue in there. I think this is really digital sculpting with T-splines. It's almost like the dog is the one that's saying this quote. T-splines is used quite a bit in jewelry, but it's also used in other industries as well. So this is an example I really liked. This is a model that Carter generated this scan using 123D Catch for the iPad, and then used the T-splines retopology tools to lay the surface on that. I really like that workflow. And then here's another jewelry example. One of the reasons why T-splines is so popular in jewelry is that you can combine the precision of computer modeling with the freeform handcrafted look that you can get with T-splines. If you've been to our forum, you probably have seen Chris Botha's prolific sharing of amazing work and tips and tricks. He's also, I really like the way that he words things as well, calling T-splines his magic elf. And then Saskia Datner, I love her T-splines models because they have the simplicity that often when you see T-splines models there, you can see a lot of complexity there, but often the greatest sophistication is just simplicity. And she does a good job of boiling these down to really simple models. And then the final model I wanted to share was this one by Joaquin. Really a challenge, and I think this is excellent work. So that's kind of what our users have been up to. And now what we've been up to. So in December 2011 is when Autodesk acquired T-splines, and then we shortly thereafter released T-splines version 3.3 for Rhino. And this was actually a very substantive release, but a lot of this work was done before the acquisition. And then we went, to be honest, we're quiet for quite a while until November, when Carl Bass announced the Autodesk Fusion 360 product on the main stage of Autodesk University, which is the first Autodesk product that has T-splines functionality. And then in December of 2012, we released a minor release that focused on stability and Rhino 5 integration. So really our focus over the past year has been getting T-splines into Autodesk products and then maintaining the T-splines for Rhino product. And that's been the consistent message we've been giving our community, is that we will maintain this tool, but to not expect much more beyond that. And that trend would have continued until I received some exciting direction from Carl Bass. So I'd just like to take some time to introduce you more to Carl and get to know him. So this is Carl Bass. He's a maker, Little League coach, and the CEO of Autodesk. So Carl, I wanted to really take a chance to introduce you in ways that maybe you're not introduced to the shareholders or to the board of directors, which is by showing some of the cool stuff that you've made.
That's probably a good idea, not showing the investors.
But I wanted to ask you, why do you make stuff like this? Is this work or hobby for you?
Oh, it's really just fun. I don't know if it's work or hobby. It's just fun. I mean, I've been making things for 30 plus years. So, you know, there's a picture there of some of the boats I worked on years ago. Over the years, I've built 5 or 6 boats, designed a couple, built 5 or 6, and I'm always building things. So it's just a passion. I don't really know if it's work or hobby.
Yeah, and in your background, your degree, if I understand correctly, is in mathematics, and so this passion for building things, I guess, just came from something beyond your educational background.
Yeah, you know, when I was in school, I spent most of my time. Yeah, I got a degree in math, but I spent a lot of time doing sculpture. So, you know, if I'd cared enough, I would have gotten a minor in sculpture. But that's where I spent a lot of my time. So, you know, I put myself through school building houses and stuff like that. So
oh wow!
I've always enjoyed building stuff, and you know, it continues. Nowadays, I feel like I have to do smaller stuff. Because I just, you know, the combination of, I do have a day job. My Little League coaching days are nearing an end as both my boys are playing baseball in high school.
Oh yeah.
So they don't need me anymore. But you know, that's giving me more time. So I get to go to the shop more often these days. But I still feel like I have to work on things that I think almost as design experiments more so than real projects, just because I just don't have the time to do really big stuff anymore. Last big thing I did was that bench which is down in the picture down there.
Okay, yeah. So tell me more about your experience making something like that bench. Do you use CAD or do you by hand, or how do you make that?
So you know, for years and years, I never used CAD. You know, the CAD and you know just engineering software or graphic software was something I did for my job, and then I built stuff on the side. You know, about 8, maybe 10 years ago, I started looking at the tools and saying, rather than just do this with paper and pencil, the tools can now actually help me do stuff that I probably couldn't otherwise do. And so the bench was one of the very first things I did where I actually used CAD. I sent you some pictures of some of those vases and other things I did that also used CAD.
Yeah.
So that's when I started to make the transition a bunch of years ago. I finally said this stuff has come far enough that it's now enabling me to do stuff that I couldn't otherwise do or couldn't do as easily. So like when I go back to like, you know, the boats I did, I designed with pencil and paper.
Gotcha.
You know, and a calculator and writing some computer programs. You know, all this other stuff that I've done lately is all as a user of CAD.
Gotcha. And do you just do the CAD? I mean, do you extend that to running analysis on this? Maybe not for that bench, or, and do you actually mill out the parts as well, or how much of the tools are you touching?
Yeah, so on the bench, I actually did analysis. It was a
Oh,
funny
really?
story because that bench is made out of a single piece of black granite,
Oh, wow.
and I showed it to a friend of mine who's a sculptor, and he looked at the part where the legs come together, and he said that won't hold up, and he had a lot of experience in this, and I had much less experience working in granite, and so I said, yeah, maybe I'll do some analysis on this. So I did do analysis on it, and I realized that that bench, even though it looks a little bit fragile where the legs come together, it's
Yeah.
pretty hefty. It's pretty hefty as it transitions into the kind of back part of it, the
Uh-huh.
seat part. And it would hold 10,000 pounds on top of that thing.
Oh, wow.
Uh, and so we did finite element analysis on it, but more often, a lot of the stuff I'm doing, I'm trying to get the form and then try to figure out how to do fabrication.
Mm-hmm.
So like the vases I did, most of those I cast out of bronze, and so it was how do you get molds for them.
Yeah.
Some of the things like the bowl that's in the upper right is something that I actually 3D printed in metal.
Oh,
For
wow.
their But before I did that, I tried about 5 other fabrication techniques, all of which failed.
Huh.
I tried to cast it and water jetted. I tried wire EDM. I tried a whole bunch of stuff that didn't work.
Oh, wow. So what CAD software are you using when you're designing, Carl?
It depends. Most of the things like the bench, the vases were done with Alias and Inventor. So some mix of, oftentimes for the curves and stuff and just getting better surfaces,
Mm-hmm.
I'll do some work in Alias. For the things that are more mechanical, I'll use Inventor. But, I had this funny conversation. I was with this guy the other night who runs a brewery, and we were out in a restaurant, and he said, I like so much better going to someone else's restaurant. And I said, why? And he said, see that napkin on the floor over there? In my restaurant, I'd be furious about it. Here I can just sit back and enjoy my beer. So while I use a lot of Autodesk software, sometimes I have that feeling, like when, like recently, we bought a CAM company called HSM Works.
Oh, sure.
And
Yeah.
and I have this big 5-axis router and a bunch of other CNC machines, and so I've been using a lot of CAM software
Okay.
that work with Inventor. But HSM Works was only a plug-in for SolidWorks, so I had to run a bunch of SolidWorks lately, and I had that same feeling of all the stuff that annoyed me, I didn't really care about.
Yeah, I heard you gave an interview with the Engineer versus Designer podcast, and you mentioned that. I liked that.
Yeah, and even with the T-Splines, because we've been doing a little work I've been using T-Splines in the context of Fusion, but that's not, the more complete implementations in Rhino. So sometimes when I need to do stuff, I just go back to Rhino and use T-Splines there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and we'll get to your T-splines work in a second. But one thing I wanted to take a chance to ask you about this. I've heard rumors from other product managers at Autodesk about what they call silver bullets, which is a secret name referring to when Carl Bass has used your product late at night to make something that it doesn't work maybe exactly how you'd like it to. And it's called the silver bullet because it usually gets somewhat immediate attention to get fixed. So first of all, I wanted to ask if that's true. And then second,
Yeah. Go ahead, Matt.
Oh, and then second, is the head of the $2 billion publicly traded company that is Autodesk, why is it important for you to do that given the other demands on your time?
So I had never heard that word before. I have had a lot of product managers. Like the product manager of Inventor is always telling me what a great product Revit is.
Uh-huh.
He says, why don't you try Maya for that? Wanting me to spend my time elsewhere. So that I don't come in with great suggestions about how to improve their product. I mean, one of the things that I do realize is that a bunch of the stuff I do with these products is not the conventional usage.
Yep.
But I think that's true of everybody. Everybody has a really intended target for their thing. But, so many people, if a tool is really good, it's used much more broadly than that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not for that very, so you can look and say this was made to design industrial machinery, but it's used much more broadly. And I think that's true whether you look at something like Inventor or something like Rhino. The uses go far beyond what the developers originally imagined it would be
Mm-hmm.
used for. So I'm a little bit tolerant, but I still like things to work. So
Yeah.
yeah, I do see, like, if I come in and there's a bug in the surfacing, it tends to get a little bit more attention. But I'm also really willing to be an advocate for any user. So if any user gives me bugs or things that they think don't work well, I'm just as happy to be an advocate for for them as for myself.
Good. And I just find that interesting that from all the demands on your time, that the quality of the products would be something that you would spend your own personal time looking at.
I think it really helps. I don't think it's the only way to be a CEO is to use the products. I mean, I'm sure other people do a fine job being CEO without, I don't know if whether the CEO of Oracle uses his products,
Yeah.
but I find it incredibly helpful. I find it incredibly helpful to, one, to just understand, at least on a limited scale, the challenges our customers go through.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's, the workflow and going from one tool to another. I can totally sympathize as as you go through multiple translations with a loss of fidelity along the way,
Yep.
or purely things just don't work, as you move from one to the other, or, they're not associative, so when you go back and make a change. So you get some sympathy for that. You also get some sympathy for, I have this idea in my head and the tool just does not allow me to express it well enough. What do I need to do that? It also, like, for example, when we went out and we bought a company that sells CAM software,
Yeah.
I had tried 5 other CAM packages before we did that. And so when the team came with a recommendation, I could at least be semi-informed
Gotcha.
about, what was out there, what's important. And I think it's good. And I think everybody who works on our side of the fence, developing software, for designers and engineers should actually do that. I think it's really hard to do without really, getting your hands dirty and trying to do stuff.
Yeah, no, I really like that approach. So let's talk a little bit. Autodesk has over 100 products, but here's some of the models that you've made with T-Splines. And why, out of all the products that you have, why do you use T-Splines, Carl?
I like T-splines. It's totally cool. That's why.
Good answer.
Good. Thanks for that. No, I mean, in some ways, T-splines lets me make some shapes really easily that I either couldn't do at all, or would just be so time consuming to do that, that I find myself doing it in T-splines because it's just so easy.
Mm-hmm.
I also like, one of the things I find about T-splines is for, like, design exploration, just fooling around and trying different things. It's really easy to do multiple iterations, quickly and easily.
Yeah.
If people are used to building, like, curved networks and, building surfaces off them, and then getting the blends and fillets all to work, you know the pain of doing that. And so, like I said, I have limited time, so in some ways I love a tool like T-Splines because it allows me to do it in a short amount of time I have.
Yeah, jump in and get more immediate gratification than needing to build up all the supporting materials. So getting along those lines, why did Autodesk acquire T-Splines a year ago?
What we saw, so for example, we have many industrial designers use our tools, particularly the Alias family.
Yeah, you've got
tools.
Alias is a great product.
Yeah, it's a great tool. People use it to express the most complex shapes, but you have to be a sophisticated user to use it well. And what we saw was this increasing desire on designers and engineers to have more sculptural shapes in their products. I also saw a much broader range of people who wanted to design. The flip side of it is, I think we're starting to see fabrication techniques, digital fabrication.
Yeah.
That we can now make things of real complexity pretty easily, even as individuals. And so, we not only have, the computer aiding in the design, but we have the computer helping in the making of stuff. And so as you're able to make more complex shapes, it's more interesting to design them. It used to be a huge limitation. Like if you look at something, let's take 3D printing as an example. shape complexity is essentially free in 3D
Yeah,
printing.
you're right.
My 3D printer couldn't care less whether it's printing a cube or whether it's, printing a really complex form. The same thing is true to a slightly lesser extent, but a lot of the CNC machines out there. And I've been doing, a combination, like I said, of, occasionally using CNC and 3D printing, but then, combining it with traditional processes like, lost wax bronze casting.
Mm-hmm.
And that ability to make things of really high quality allows you to back up into the design process and say, I want to do it there. But what was also interesting is I saw amongst our customers this huge desire to make better looking products, better form. You see it nowadays, even in, you go into Target and the toaster, the vacuum, the handheld vacuum cleaner, or on the industrial side, you'll see a forklift that now all have structural shapes in them. Sculptural shapes in them,
Sure.
not just, purely structural. So it was really interesting to a broad base of our customers. And while I think things like parametric solid modeling, like in products like Inventor are great for lots of stuff, they're not particularly great for form exploration. They're not particularly great for the organic shapes. And so I looked and said, this is a great complement for what we already have and do well.
Yep. Yeah, and that's our view as well, that T-Splines is a great tool for your toolbox. And I like what you've done in Fusion 360, and we'll touch on this a little bit more later, how T-Splines is a tool there alongside other tools like direct solid modeling. But
and you see it in Rhino all the time. I mean, like when you look at it and you listen to what someone did, they say, I did this in T-Splines, and then I did this part in Rhino.
Yeah.
And, I think it shows off the complementary nature.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit more, Carl. So a few months ago, Fusion 360 was launched. It was an exciting development for Autodesk. But right along that same time, you and I started having conversations, and we got some direction from you to resume active development of T-Splines for Rhino. And I wonder if you could talk more about that decision and why you made that decision.
Yeah, I think the world in which both we and our customers live in is one in which people use multiple tools, and they're going to continue to use multiple tools, and it's important for these multiple tools to work together. And so I looked, specifically, let's look at the T-Splines one and said, if someone wants to use it going forward in an Autodesk product, great. But if somebody wants to use T-Splines inside of Rhino, I think that's fine too. I have a huge respect, for Bob and the team, who have built Rhino. I think they've done a great job, and if people want to work in that environment, they should have T-Splines available to do it. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought this is silly not doing, especially when you think about it from our side, which is the development side.
Mm-hmm.
So much of the basic underlying, the concepts and the math, we can make visible in multiple products.
Yep.
So we can continue to invest, and then there's a small amount of extra work to make it available on each of the platforms. So I thought we're going to keep continuing T-Splines. You guys are doing a great job furthering the development of T-Splines, and we should have it as available on as many platforms as makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just thrilled to hear that, because from someone that's more historically interested in just the success of the T-Splines technology than necessarily any one group of users or company having the sole rights for T-Splines going forward, I mean that exactly resonated with the view that we'd always had. So that was really exciting for me to get that direction from you.
Yeah, no, I think it'll be great for the Rhino community. I think in general, what I've been trying to do is say, the idea that software developers often have that they're going to, kind of force their users to use all the tools from one company, I think is a ridiculous and outdated
That's not
notion.
really realistic, is it?
Yeah, almost nobody does. I even told you, I use a bunch of other tools. I'll grab a bunch of other tools to do stuff because, the most important thing for me, in my personal work is being able to express it and get from end to end. Mm-hmm. How do I get from this idea in my head to the thing that I actually make? And I think the same thing is true whether it's an individual or a company. It's the product that they want to make that's most important. It is not the tools that they use.
Yep. Yep.
I mean, I certainly don't feel that way in my regular shop. You know, I don't say I'm only going to use all the tools by, you know, fill in the blank company.
Sure.
I pick up whatever workshop tool, you know, makes the most sense to use at that moment.
Yep. Yeah, you're just trying to get the job done. Um, well, good. I really appreciate that background, your willingness to explain that decision to our community. What I'd like to do now is transition a little bit into some more details about exactly what the future of T-Splines looks like. So let's jump into some details. So specifically, we can now announce that T-Splines version 4 for Rhino is under development, and this will be released as a beta in June of 2013. So just to add a few more details as far as what we'll be doing in this release, we will have 3 themes. One is customer satisfaction, and that's a broad theme, but the focus will be on optimizing 2 or 3 of the most common workflows that our users have for speed and ease of use. So this will involve reducing the number of clicks necessary to complete tasks, improving our selection tools, which if you've used T-Splines a lot, you understand that getting the quality of the selection tools really impacts your speed, and those can always certainly be improved. Enhancing the user interface, and then adding feature enhancements. So as part of this, we've actually reserved some development time to specifically respond to customer requests. And so we'll be taking these on the T-Splines form, and we'll have a link to that at the end of the webinar. The second area of focus for us is better integration with Rhino 5 and Grasshopper. Now, the T-Splines integration with Rhino 5 is already quite good, and as I've been talking with users ahead of this webinar, I haven't been getting a lot of complaints. They feel like there's already very good integration there, but we know that there are a few areas that we can improve that. And then the other area that's really interesting for us is better integration with Grasshopper. Now, if you're not familiar with Grasshopper, this is an image of Grasshopper is a free plugin for Rhino that lets you do generative design. So you kind of add your inputs here, connect them together, and then kind of control variations with sliders, and then your form changes depending on the inputs that you give it. It's a really cool way to express different repeating forms. And we have today a small T-Splines integration with Grasshopper that in a way was just kind of a proof of concept, and we can expose a lot more to T-Splines so that you'll be able to have much more ability to explore T-Splines forms with Grasshopper. The third area of focus for us will be core T-Splines improvements, and this is what Carl was talking about. The T-Splines library kind of sits in the back end, and that can be plugged into whatever front end that we want to. So this is the same back end that we use for the Autodesk products and the Rhino products. And so the improvements that you'll see specifically here is continued increased performance, and then we'll also be focusing on T-Splines creasing, which if you've used T-Splines in the past, you know that creasing is a very powerful tool, but there's some pretty clear improvements that we can make there. So that's what you see with T-Splines version 4 for Rhino, and that will be coming out with the beta in June. But before June, we also wanted to talk about how we'll be re-engaging with our community. The top thing is reintroducing our regular webinars, and this is backed by popular demand. If you haven't been to many T-Splines webinars in the past, these aren't so much sales webinars as us giving a chance for a user who's doing cool stuff with T-Splines to show you what he's doing and then actually model live to show you how he interacts with the product. So the next 2 webinars will be in April and June. In April will be an industrial design focus with Cesare Monti, he's an Italian that's done some amazing work with T-Splines. And then in June, it will be focused on jewelry with Saskia Datner. And if you've been on the T-Splines forum, she has a pretty impressive gallery there of work that she's done with T-Splines. So we'll be sending out invitations for those as it gets closer. The second bit of community engagements that we'll be engaging in is third-party training. Now, back when we were T-Splines Inc., this is something we would actually do as a company. I would lead these trainings, or I get users to lead them. We just aren't set up to do that at Autodesk. But what's happened in the meantime is a number of third parties have sprung up that are offering T-Splines training. Coincidentally, one of these from Mode Lab is actually having a 2.5-hour online T-Splines training session tomorrow. So if you just Google Mode Lab T-Splines, you'll be able to find that. It's fairly inexpensive, but should be a very good introductory course. Other firms that are offering T-Splines training include the Outside Digital Art and Design, Pivot Product Productions, and there's others as well. So if you have a need for training, please contact me, and I'll be able to introduce you to these good T-Splines trainers. Or if you're offering training, then let me know, and we'll offer a place on our website. We'll be able to share that information with the community. The third area of community engagement is product support, and this is actually something that never ended. So we're just continuing this on to offer product support on our forum and over email, tsplineshelp@autodesk.com. And as many of you know, you can also call me directly if that fails. So if you don't have my number, I'll be including that in the follow-up email from the webinar. But the final area of community engagement is just broader engagement in general. So one unfortunate fact with T-Splines right now is it's sold only on the Autodesk eStore, which is not available in every area of the world. So fairly often I'll get emails from people in places like India or South America where the eStore is not available who want to purchase T-Splines. In the coming months, you'll see us broadening the availability of T-Splines. We'll be re-engaging with T-Splines resellers and making T-Splines available across the world again. In the meantime, if you aren't able to purchase T-Splines, go ahead and email me, and I'll be able to get you an extended free trial license key so you can use that until it's possible to purchase it. And then the final bit about broader engagement is if you've been in our T-Splines forum, there's a lot of good material there. It's a dated form, though, and there's a lot of benefits we want to add in order to help us engage with our community better. You'll see us taking more advantage of Autodesk form structure and starting to leverage that. And so that's something that we'll be engaging with you on as we transition on to a more modern form platform based on the Autodesk infrastructure. So that's kind of the plans for T-Splines for Rhino for the next while. And now I just wanted to touch a little bit about T-Splines beyond Rhino. And I came across this quote last week that really spoke to me. It says the test of innovation lies not in its novelty, its scientific content, or its cleverness. It lies in success in the marketplace. And the reason why that really spoke with me is our T-Splines team, you may know our background's technology, and I actually started the T-Splines company 8 years ago with my dad, who invented T-Splines, with the goal of improving, of giving designers and engineers an easier way to create freeform and organic shapes besides the tools that were already out there. And for us, the way that we measured our success wasn't whether T-Splines was something cool, but whether it was actually useful for people. And thanks to you, T-Splines has succeeded in Rhino, but that's just the start. And you'll be able to see that T-Splines is now being spread across Autodesk. And there's a number of different industries at Autodesk that are actively investigating or implementing T-Splines in their products. So, Carl, I don't know if this is at a level where you've had any insight into what these groups are doing.
Yeah, no, I think you described it, quite right, Matt, is that people are taking T-Splines and seeing its use in a number of areas. The obvious one is the industrial design. But, increasingly in the automotive world, we've seen people who want to do concept development and want an easier tool to do it earlier in the process, get more iteration, so there, as well as what I was referring to before, more things that were traditionally the domain of, strictly mechanical design have become more sculptural in nature, and so we see application of T-Splines broadly across our portfolio.
Yeah, and as we alluded to earlier, the first product that is bringing T-Splines to market from an Autodesk perspective is Autodesk Fusion 360, and I want to take a few minutes to introduce Autodesk Fusion 360 to our customers. I've thought long and hard about this because this is the T-Splines for Rhino webinar. And I know that there's a number of you that are completely satisfied by the combination of T-Splines and Rhino and have no desire or need to add another piece of software to your toolbox. And so if you fall in that camp, then in a few minutes I'll tell you the only 3 things you need to know about Fusion 360 and how it will increase the value of your T-Splines skills. However, there are others of you that are maybe you're contractors or you work on spread out teams. Maybe you're struggling to keep track of files that have different design iterations, which with T-Splines can be particularly difficult, or have maybe a need for an easy-to-use solid modeler to complement what you're doing in T-Splines and Rhino. And because I thought a fair number of you might fall in that camp, I wanted to give you a chance to hear Carl Bass introduce what we're doing with Fusion 360, just because from my perspective as is the former CEO of T-Splines Inc. This is the type of product that we dreamed of creating but never really had the resources to do. So I don't know if you just want to take a couple minutes, Carl, to introduce kind of broadly what we're doing here.
Yeah, sure. But, I would just back up what you said, Matt. I just reinforce it and go, for the people who are happy using Rhino and T-splines, they should. And just bear with us for a couple minutes while we describe it. We're not at all, trying to switch people. This is another offering that's just getting to market. So let me just tell you about Fusion 360. But keep that caveat in mind. If you're happy with Rhino and T-splines, by all means, keep using it. We've said to ourselves, what does the future design tool look like? And we said there were a number of things that we wanted to bring to market. One is that we wanted it to be cloud-based. We wanted to have integrated data management built into it. But what we really wanted was an ability to have both parametric modeling, parametric feature-based solid modeling, push and pull history-free modeling, and organic modeling that's like T-splines, all combined in one package, where you can move between those environments easily. And that was the basic idea behind Fusion 360, is that you could be working in solid models and NURBS, and you could switch over and do something more sculptural and go back and forth easily and quickly, all in one environment. So that's what we built. It's in beta. We've had about 100 people using it. We're just starting to broaden the beta to a couple thousand. If anyone's interested, by all means, send us an email. We'll give you some information where you can end up signing up and get in the beta. I think for many of the Rhino users, the best thing to know is T-splines is becoming a core part of our tool set, and like we said before, all the enhancements that go into Fusion 360 in T-splines will also be available in the Rhino version.
Yep.
Is that good, Matt?
Yeah, no, I like that. And just to kind of emphasize that, I mean, these are good benefits. And as a T-splines user, I wanted to inform you, because other people will be asking you about this because you use T-splines and there's T-splines here. But if we just kind of push that all aside, I mean, the three things that's important for you to know as a T-splines for Rhino user is, one, Autodesk is investing heavily in this, and the reason why that's important is because this will increase the broad use of T-splines. Second, you can send your T-spline model that you created in T-splines for Rhino to anyone using Fusion 360. So you can continue using T-splines for Rhino, and then if you're if someone you're contracting with uses Fusion 360, that will be a seamless transition of your data to that. And then finally, which I think is the most important point, is that the popularity of Autodesk Fusion 360 will make your T-spline skills more valuable, because most people coming into this community have not used T-splines before, and you as T-splines for Rhino users or experts really are in a position to be leaders in this community, if that's something that's interesting to you.
Yeah, I would have certainly said that, Matt. I wish I had a T-splines for Rhino user as I was learning T-splines. I spent a lot of time. I would load up my iPad with videos and go to the gym and watch them.
Oh wow. So just to sum up, kind of the 3 points we wanted to have you take away as the future of T-splines. First is just that T-splines for Rhino will resume active development, and if you'd like to participate in that, go ahead and submit your development requests on our T-splines forum. We're listening to that, and we've reserved time in development to specifically respond to those. Second, Autodesk is putting T-splines into other products and markets, and then third, that Fusion 360 is that first product using T-splines at Autodesk, and if you want to be involved in that community, even if you're just still using T-splines for Rhino but want to maybe assert a position of leadership there, you can join the public beta at that web address. So with that, I want to say thanks for Carl for taking this time, and let's see if we have any questions. Let me go ahead and pop this up. See, it looks like Nick's been responding to a bunch of these, so thanks for doing that, Nick. Let's see. There's a lot of questions. I'm scrolling on to see which ones haven't been answered yet. Okay, so here's some here's some questions. What about development of T-splines for SolidWorks? Do you have anything you'd like to talk about that with Carl, or should I handle that?
You know, yeah, well, I mean, one of the questions, I've always asked you is, how many T-splines users were on SolidWorks versus how many were on were on Rhino?
Yep.
Even before the acquisition by Autodesk.
Yeah, and to be honest, where we were at was Rhino was by far our strongest community. We had a product for SolidWorks called TS Elements, which was kind of an import functionality that was kind of trying to prove the concept about whether T-splines inside a solid modeler was something that was valuable. And that was kind of the extent to what we had released before the acquisition. I know, Carl, that you've talked about just in general, this philosophy of supporting competitive products. This is something that's interesting to us. I think where I'm at still is at a point where I'm trying to figure out what exactly that means for SolidWorks. And since we...
Yeah, so I have no philosophical objections. As a matter of fact, like I said, and the joke that I was making on the designer versus engineer thing was, we bought HSM Works. HSM Works is a CAM package that it's only a plugin for SolidWorks. It now looks funny, it has some Autodesk branding on its website, and it says HSM Works, the CAM solution for SolidWorks, by Autodesk.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that at all. I would love to hear from the community and see if there's a big demand for T-splines inside of SolidWorks. If there is and it makes sense to be there, I'm okay with doing it there. I think, by far the biggest community is on Rhino, and, a fair amount of our resources are then tied up after Rhino with, bringing it out on Fusion. But I'd love to hear if there's real demand for it to be, to be in SolidWorks. I know it's as painful in SolidWorks as an inventor to do the organic modeling that T-splines is good at. So if if there's a big need, we'd entertain the idea of doing it.
Yeah, and I think at a product management standpoint, I'm just at a point where I'm trying to understand if that's sustainable, because that's what we feel like T-splines for Rhino was sustainable to push that forward, and I just need to we need to understand that a little bit better for SolidWorks.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's just a comment from Harry. I'm a dedicated Rhino user, used AutoCAD in the past, but converted to Rhino for many good reasons, and just needed a reassurance that T-splines will be continued for Rhino. I hear this being repeated, but just wanted to state again this as a dedicated user. I appreciate Carl's positive statements in this direction. So I guess it's more of a comment, but here's a question from Lucas. Will there be better creasing star points, choosing which lines should be creased? Now this is a pretty technical question, Carl, but creasing really is an area.
Oh, I know.
I don't know if you tried creasing in T-splines, but that's...
I've tried creasing, and star points are the bane of my existence.
Yep. This is the two top priorities for us with T-splines development are always performance is always a priority for us, but creasing is the other area that we're actually developing on right now. So that will be a key feature of the version 4 release. Let's see. I tried to join the Fusion 360 public beta, but haven't heard back yet. Is there a date when you'll be accepting other beta testers?
Yeah, so those guys just opened it up. We wanted to make sure, because there's a cloud infrastructure component of this, we want to make sure we could support people well. I think this is the week in which they're opening it up broader. If somebody wants to make sure they get in, just send me an email, and I'll make sure they get into the beta for Fusion 360. My email is carl.bass@autodesk.com.
Perfect. Yeah, and I confirmed with the Fusion 360 team just before the webinar. They did just barely open it up, so hopefully those will go through a little bit easier now. Question: will T-splines continue with Matrix as a bundle? So I don't know if you're familiar. Matrix is a jewelry product based on top of Rhino that bundles T-splines, and some of those impressive jewelry models were done using T-splines with Matrix. Yeah, T-splines is still there, and I don't see that changing. So that's a great partnership for us. Here's a question: T-splines for Alias.
I think after people look at Fusion 360 and some of the work, we're going to do similar work on Alias. So more details to come exactly what we're doing with Alias. We think it's a great combination.
Yep.
But we'll have more to say in the coming months.
Sure. Yeah, and just kind of for the information of the community, in addition to the T-Splines product manager, I'm also now the Alias product manager. So we're certainly aware of T-Splines there and working on ways to get that functionality to our users. Let's see. So here's a question. Fusion 360 will be distributed in monthly contracts like Adobe?
So we're working out the details right now. There's going to be a base part of functionality that's going to be available for free. And then people will be able to do it monthly, quarterly, annual, whatever's most convenient for them.
Okay.
So there'll be a free component that we'll talk about more in the next month or so, and then we'll talk about the other parts. But it will be certainly a lower price product than most of our industrial design and mechanical design applications.
Okay. A number of comments about desire for T-Splines in SolidWorks. So this is the type of feedback that's valuable for us.
Yeah.
Question about T-Splines in Pro E or Creo.
I mean, my take on it is that, the Pro E base is small and getting smaller every day. I'd be surprised if it made sense for, just made financial sense for us to do. I'd much rather push the technology forward and spend more resources on making T-Splines better.
Yep.
10 years ago or 15 years ago, I might have had a different answer to that question.
Sure. Yep. So here's a question from a reseller in Germany that used to sell T-Splines for Rhino and still get a lot of requests for it. Would like to know who to contact about becoming a reseller again. Now this,
if they send either of us an email, we can forward to the right person. I mean, the thing I'd love to do, just like you said, Matt, is get T-Splines available in more places, on more e-stores and in more resellers' hands. Yep. I mean, the more partners that can sell this, the better. So we just have to figure out how to broaden the distribution again on T-Splines.
Yep. Yeah, and actually that work has already started, so I can put you in touch with the right people there. A question: do you foresee supporting Rhino into version 6, version 7, version 8? So
yeah, I mean, my answer is yes. Yours, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, so Rhino's at version 5 now. The thing about T-Splines for Rhino is that, I mean, it's an integrated product, and I think that, yeah, the products work really well together. So I think that's, I don't see an end to us stopping to develop for Rhino.
Yeah, and I think the real value is in the integration.
Yep.
And so, and also once a new version's out, I mean, essentially, if you're not on the latest version, I think it's hard to really be, it's hard to be a good plug-in provider.
Yep.
And say, yeah, we do it, but on old versions. That's just having been on the software side too long, that doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. So, I imagine us completely supporting it into the future.
Yep. I'm pleased to find that Carl is a maker and knows how to use CNC. Very cool.
Actually, I need some help right now. The thing I'm trying to mill is at the limit of my capabilities, and so I'm actually trying to mill a table that's it's about 3 feet by 3 feet by 4 feet, and it's
oh, wow.
at the limit. So if anyone wants to help me, I'm currently struggling. When it's all done, I'm sure I'll say, "Oh, it was easy. I just did this and this." But I'm at that funny part of the project where I can't believe I got started on this.
Yeah, well, Carl, I'm sure if you post on our forum, there'd be more than a number of people that could help you. I do know, by the way, that you hang out on the Autodesk Constructables forum, don't you?
I've written a number of. I'm a stalker. I'm a lurker on the T-Splines forum. I've never posted there, but I read it all the time.
Actually,
I look at it.
You did post once, and I need to
post once.
Be clear that was actually you.
That was totally me, but yeah, I posted once. But I read the T-Splines forum all the time. I read the CAM forum all the time. I read the Inventor forum all the time. And I posted like 3 or 4 Instructables. I haven't, the last couple projects I haven't put up there, that I've done, but I should. But I look at Instructables all the time too.
Yep. So here's a question: will you be creating any new training videos for T-Splines for beginners? This is a great question because, and I think this speaks to some of the benefits that we get by having so much emphasis at Autodesk placed on Fusion 360, is that because there's that T-splines component, I think we'll be able to leverage quite a bit of the resources used there for T-splines for Rhino as well.
I'm on this guy's side, Matt. Please, please, please. As, you know, as a relatively new T-splines user, you know what? I mean, this was my experience. I don't know if there's similar to others. I found it incredibly powerful. I mean, there's nothing like, you know, moving a point or an edge and all, you know, and the surfaces, you know, maintain their continuity and all that. But a bunch of times, just the idea of how to get started, that I have something in my head, it was not as intuitive. You know, a couple of the ones you did, you know, with your postage stamp method certainly helped. But I would certainly, as a beginning user, love to understand, you know, conceptually how to approach, you know, I have this form, this is what I'm thinking about, and what's the right way to lay this out, you know, as much as the mechanics of, moving back and forth between one mode or another, or, you know, how to move a particular edge or vertex or something like that. It was really, for me, it was like conceptually approaching and going, what's the best way to model this thing?
Yeah, no, I think you're right, and I think that's the trick for going to T-splines, is it's not merely a new tool set, but it's a new way of approaching modeling. I mean, it's as different from surface modeling as surface modeling is from solid modeling, right? It's a completely different paradigm.
Yeah, you know, and I know your postage stamp method.
Yeah, it's kind of the brute force. Yep.
Right, but I know there are other times, and certainly when I've gotten to the end of a model, I said, "Oh, I could have done it this way," but I still don't. I still don't have a good, you know, collection of ideas, you know, of different approaches for doing that. And so I'd love to see the way some of the people do it, and you know, that certainly as a beginning user who's proficient in doing surface modeling and solid modeling, I would find that incredibly helpful.
Yeah, so point well taken, Carl. I think that's an area we can improve in. Okay, so a question, will there be more specific webinars on ship, yacht, hull detail modeling with T-splines? That's a great question, and to be perfectly honest with you, ship modeling is something that's always been intriguing for me with T-splines, and there are some actually trainings going on in Europe. You know, Gerard Peterson in the Netherlands is doing trainings. Yeah, and we should see if there's a way we can leverage those more broadly for the rest of the community. Let's see. Will you have a more convenient way to decimate meshes when converting them to T-splines? These are good questions. There's a number of technical questions like this that we can discuss more in our forums, but I believe this question is moving from like a finely detailed mesh or triangulated mesh into a lower poly mesh for T-splines, and that's certainly an area where today there's a lot of other tools you can do that and then pull that model into T-splines, so tools like ZBrush or Mudbox, but that's certainly an area that would be interesting to see if we can get that right in the plugin itself. Let's see. Let's see. We are testing with success T-splines in a racing car body design pipeline. We start in Maya subdivision surfaces, low polygons with CFD aerodynamic simulation. Next step, we clear the T-points in Rhino on the first or second subdivision, and after we do some strock surfaces in Alias. Can we get T-splines in Maya? That's an interesting question. I don't know if you know, Carl, we actually put T-splines in Maya years ago, and the technology was still a little bit green to actually have a good product. But
I mean, that's a fascinating workflow. First of all,
yeah,
I think it's a really interesting idea. We should go back and actually look at that.
Yeah, no, that is interesting because
I think there's a lot of stuff that people do in Maya that would really benefit from having T-splines.
Yeah, where it's not just used for the entertainment, for actually something being manufactured.
Yeah, the one other thing I would mention, I think it's still, you know, it's out there and free, but there's this other piece of technology I've been fooling around with a little bit, which is called Mesh Mixer.
Oh, yeah.
A couple of these covers. Yeah, so for people who haven't looked at it, it's a fun thing to look at. I think it's free and available. I think it's actually at like meshmixer.com. But that's interesting. But you know, to the person's point, let's go back and look at T-Splines and Maya because I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, yep, agreed. Oh, Carl, Stan has a good 6-foot by 12-foot CNC that would be happy to help you.
Okay, I need to talk to him about fixturing this thing.
Okay, a lot of responses agreeing with your encouragement on better T-splines training material, Carl. Is there any plans to bring a T-splines product to market that would be suitable for makers, lower price, and simple to use surfacing?
So I think the place to look is really what we're going to do with Fusion.
Mm-hmm.
I think the component that we make broadly available may be perfect for makers. We've also done a whole line of software, free software called 123D, including 123D design.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on what we do with Fusion, either that'll be good, or we may end up having to add some technology to 123D. The interesting thing about this whole new category of makers, makers is really broad, from people, doing stuff that, is very simple, to some of the stuff that I see being done, when I look Instructables or, go down to a tech shop and see what people are doing, is incredibly sophisticated. So I think it depends on the sophistication. If it's someone who wants that surfacing, probably Fusion will be best. But
Yep.
there's also 123D as a possible avenue to bring some of this to market.
Yeah, and it's been interesting to see some of our users blur the lines. Like I really like that customer example we shared at the start of someone who used 123D catch to scan and then retopologize
Yeah.
that in T-splines.
Yeah, and I love doing things like with Catch, and that's where I've been using Mesh Mixer and some of the other stuff. And, then I have Maya in the workflow as well. Like you said, there's lots of tools out there that you can do for decimation and stuff.
Yep.
But I think Catch is incredibly, interesting technology, even if you just use it as a backdrop for some of the modeling.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, exactly. To that point, someone's campaigning for 123D for Android. I don't know what the influences are for that.
123D for Android's coming. I mean, if it's not already out there, we're going to end up, the platforms that it's going to work on will be Macs and PCs, iOS, and Android. So if there's something that's not out there quite yet, it's just a matter of timing. But they don't always come out at the same time, but the intention is to support both platforms equally.
Great. So here's a question about licensing. So the question is, are Rhino-like education licenses going to come back to T-splines, or does Autodesk have a different point of view? And the background on this is we used to sell education licenses at a discount for like $200 that could be used for professional use. And actually, now that we've joined Autodesk, we actually make available T-splines for free to students for a 3-year license, and it's the complete full functionality that is just part of the license agreement is to not be used for commercial use.
So I mean, for us, one of the things that people don't know enough, or not everybody knows, is that we make all of our products available free for students and faculty worldwide. So 3-year licenses, it's available for free. We're looking at broadening that a little bit in the future, and announcements will be coming, but any student or faculty can get any of our products. So, as you hear us talk about Maya or Alias, all those products are available, and I don't see any reason that T-splines will be any different.
Yeah, it already is there actually. So
yeah, and I think it's just students.autodesk.com.
Yep, and that's for students. Yep, and students and faculty can get that there.
Yeah.
So yeah, and we've actually had thousands of people get that for free in the last few months.
Yeah, I mean there are tens of thousands of people a week who download our software off that portal. So that's available, and T-Spline should be there, and we'll keep supporting it.
Yep. Okay. Well, good. There's more questions coming in, but I only blocked out Carl's time for an hour. So Carl, once again, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with our community. I know that your time's hard to come by, so thanks for taking this chance.
Okay. Thanks so much, Matt.
Okay. All right. We'll talk to everyone later.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.